Welcome to the MamaThrive podcast. I'm Kendra Blake, and I'm so glad you are here. I believe that motherhood is far more than a life stage to survive. It is a profound rite of passage, a developmental transition that reshapes identity, values, relationships, and the nervous system itself. And when motherhood is properly understood and compassionately supported, it can become a powerful catalyst for self-discovery, meaning, and reclamation. This podcast is grounded in what I now call the reclaimed motherhood method, a compassion-led framework that honors the emotional, embodied, and identity-shifting realities of becoming a mother, rather than asking women to simply cope, push through, or perform motherhood better. Every fortnight, I'm joined in thoughtful, honest conversation by mothers and the professionals who support them, therapists, doulas, clinicians, coaches, and practitioners, as we explore what it truly means to be inside the work of motherhood and to support mothers in ways that are ethical, embodied, and sustainable. My intention with this podcast is to create a space where we talk about motherhood differently, a space for growth-orientated mothers and those who walk alongside them, who sense that there is more beneath the surface, more nuance, more truth, more permission to slow down, feel deeply, and reconnect with who they are becoming. MamaThrive is an invitation to step away from perfection, productivity, and self-abandonment, and towards a motherhood that is more connected, compassionate, and consciously lived. Because within the challenges of modern motherhood lies not just the possibility of coping, but the opportunity to reclaim, to integrate, and to thrive with purpose. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of MamaThrive. You're here with me, Kendra, and today I have the absolute privilege of being joined by Suzy Reading, who's a chartered psychologist and one of the UK's leading experts in self-care and self-advocacy. She has over a decade of experience in health and well-being and draws on her qualifications in yoga, personal training, together with psychology, to empower people to live sustainable, healthy lifestyle habits. She has a special interest in helping people heal their relationship with themselves. This feels like an incredible thing to be offering this community, so I am so excited to dive into this conversation and hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. Suzy, thank you so much for saying yes to joining me on MamaThrive. I really am so thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Kendra. I really appreciate it.
So I'm going to jump right in and ask a little bit about you. Could you give me a bit of a background around how you landed in the role that you have, and just so that my audience can know who I'm speaking to?
Sure. Okay, so I'm Suzy Reading. I'm a chartered psychologist. I specialize in stress, loss and change. I spent a previous decade of professional life working as a yoga teacher and another previous decade working as a personal trainer. And I really love drawing these modalities together to empower people with nourishing skills and habits. I'm also an author. I've written 10 books now. This one, How to Be Selfish, is number 10. So most of those books have been about self-care, how we can take care of ourselves, but I wanted to move into the territory of self-advocacy with How to Be Selfish, which is all about how we can feel safe and confident to represent ourselves, to speak of our feelings and needs so that we can also be cared for. So that's a really important part of my work. But Kendra, I want to be totally transparent with everyone listening. Qualifications aside, it was very much my lived experience of becoming a mum at the same time as losing my dad to motor neurone disease. That really, at the time, I thought it was all about how I, get on my own side, learn how to be tender with me, take care of me and my needs, self-care. But I think it's in hindsight and probably now in perimenopause that I realized it wasn't just about taking care of self. It was also a lesson, a longer drawn out lesson in letting people care for me as well. So receiving that love, care and support.
Suzy, it really just touched something in me when you spoke about that, because I think there's something about the depth of the human experience that comes so much more from the lived experience of it than the qualifications and the things that we learn or the skills that we gather. And you naming something here, because my listenership is predominantly mothers and women who support mothers. So I just want to acknowledge you and your journey, and then equally ask how you feel motherhood in particular has shaped all that you've come together and to integrate and share with the world. Do you have a concise answer for that?
I would say it's been a huge influence on shaping not only who I am as a professional, but who I am as a woman. The lessons come thick and fast in motherhood, don't they? I can remember, so when Charlotte was born, I can remember I desperately wanted to give every cell and fibre of my being to her, but I was also taking care of Dad, who was in intensive care, and I was trying to support Mum, who was supporting Dad in intensive care, and it was just like, I can't, this selfless mother thing, this is not working for me. I cannot be the selfless mother and actually show up as I aspire to. So, and I think that the best description I can give of that was energetic bankruptcy. You know, you put yourself last long enough, you're going to wind up in a heap. And how does that serve anyone? You know, it really doesn't. I learned very, very quickly that my depletion served no one and my nourishment served everyone. So I guess that's really where this desire to remove the barriers to self-care, to help people understand what self-care is. You know, this is not, for me, it was, honestly, it was a matter of survival. This was not about a nice to have. It was about, what can I do that's going to keep me here? You know, it's not about bubble baths and massages. It was, I had to develop the skills of self-compassion, self-forgiveness, grappling with the chasm between what I thought motherhood was going to be and the reality of it, especially given those life variables. But it's a journey, isn't it?
It is. I can feel myself having to rein myself back here, because I'm like, I can speak to Suzy for hours. You've just named all the pieces of the puzzle that I just love, because there's something so rich about this idea of self-care as a form of advocacy or self-advocacy. I can really see where your threads have come from, Suzy, in your background. When you speak about this idea of self-care as the foundation of self-advocacy, can you describe that process a little bit more? Why is self-advocacy such a strong form of self-care, and vice versa?
Okay, so I see self-care as this is how we tend to our health. This is how we lovingly meet our own needs. For us to be able to advocate for ourselves, we've got to be connected with self. And I would suggest that a lot of self-care practices, the ones that I would recommend, are the ones that connect us with self. They bring us home to self. We can't advocate for self without that connection.
Yeah.
But in terms of self-advocacy, I think people don't necessarily know what that is. Okay, so self-care is tending to self. It's nourishing skills and practices. Self-advocacy is our ability to speak up on our behalf. It's our ability to act in our own interests. And you can see how this is distinct from selfishness. Self-advocacy is us being able to say, I need this is how I'm feeling, please could you, this would be my preference. Yes. Selfishness is where we are only thinking about self, where potentially we're exploiting others. Now, I would suggest that so many mums confuse the two. We've got to this very binary thinking that you're either a selfless mum or you're a selfish mum. Now, I would suggest that the opposite to selflessness is actually boundaried. Yes, we don't have to deny self. We can be contained. We can reclaim the right to possess a sense of self. And part of that is allowing ourselves to have feelings and needs. Without the skills of self-advocacy, this is really important for people who are like, no, I'm not really sure about this. Without the skills of self-advocacy, no one is ever going to know what's going on in here. Yeah, we haven't got a glass head. We've got to be skilled in saying, this is what I need, this is how I feel. And I think for most mums, we are very good at tending to the needs of others. Yeah.
Completely.
We're actually getting a lot better at meeting our own needs. Yeah. The missing piece is allowing others to care for us. because
Yeah.
I think we're raised to believe that you've got to be the selfless mum. So if you're selfless, then well, you shouldn't need anyone else. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
also all of this sort of more recent messaging about resilience and suggesting that we somehow should be immune from life's challenges, and that, you know, a good human being is one that doesn't burden anyone else. All of this stuff makes it so unhelpful, and so it's so difficult for us to advocate for ourselves and feel comfortable receiving love and support. But we all need it.
Yeah, completely. It feels really serendipitous, actually. I came off the back of having had a session this morning with a mum who was really in this double bind around how do I communicate my needs without feeling as though I'm burdening somebody else. And I think you've nailed it there. I think whether you are a mother or somebody in a caregiving role, I'm even thinking about your relationship with your father, or even the fact of being a psychologist. As myself, I'm an occupational therapist. And largely the group that I speak to here are women who are mother supporters, so women who are mother care workers. They're out in the community living and guiding themselves through heart-led work. We are often giving so much more from the sense of over-responsibility, and often negating ourselves, self-abandoning in the process, feeling as though we have to make ourselves invisible so that we can meet the needs of others. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head by recognizing that this is largely a kind of sociological title or label that we've felt that we've had to take on, which is to be the selfless, the good girl, the people pleaser, because that's how you take care of everybody else.
Yes.
And by virtue of that, you preserve relationships, but do you really?
Yeah, excellent question. I think given what you just described there in terms of your listeners, I think there's another complexity here. And Kendra, I'd be keen to get your take on this.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I definitely identify with being a highly sensitive person.
Completely.
Yes. Okay. I think a lot of highly sensitive people find themselves naturally in these caregiving roles, in these supportive, nurturing roles. I think for HSPs, there's another element that makes self-advocacy sometimes a bit painful, and sometimes there's a grief here. There might even be a rage. I'm going to go so far as to say that, because I think as an HSP, or someone who's just very attuned to others, someone who's very empathetic, big feelers, big thinkers, we are naturally privy to the emotional expressions, and perhaps we can forecast the needs of others even before they've registered themselves. They've not necessarily had to put their hand up and say, oh, by the way, please, could you do this for me? This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need. Because we're observing, we read, we sense. Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when people don't reciprocate that, it can be really painful, because you're like, I'm doing all of this giving. I'm doing all of this sensing and identifying, and I'm even before you ask, I'm doing it. And when that's not done for us, it's kind of like, what's going on here? But not everyone else has that capacity, and it's really important that HSPs don't interpret that as a lack of love. I think we've got to acknowledge that we all bring different skills to relationships, and if we can look at, like, we're part of a team. I bring this, you bring that. Perhaps there can be an education, and I think this is something that I'm working on. But for us to have our needs met, generally we do have to verbalise it, unless you're in partnership with another highly sensitive person. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, completely. I really, really resonate, both personally and professionally, and also with the women that I support and that I hold in a sense of containment around this idea that we are working with different individuals all the time. And I think the hardest thing in relationship with others is feeling seen. So feeling seen in your experience of living this really crazy, messy, imperfect life. And I think often what happens, and maybe I'd definitely love to hear your take on this one, Suzy, is if we think about that piece of really desperately wanting to connect in with other people, but struggling to communicate our needs, struggling to self-advocate, ultimately through our own sense of self-abandoning, we're not really allowing people to see us or offer the support that we need, are we? And I mean, I'm coming back to your term that you've you brought in earlier, which is that energetic bankruptcy and the resentment that can come from there. I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts around not being able to self-advocate and this energetic bankruptcy, and what that happens ultimately when we are in a space of caregiving, whether it be mothering or working from a professional lens. What happens? What have you seen happen?
Yeah. So what I see, what I've experienced myself, learned a lot of stuff the hard way, Kendra. But what I also observe many, many times over in my consulting room is that these unmet needs, this unvoiced disappointment, hardens into resentment, and it really eats away at us, and it's really corrosive, and it can lead to really serious ruptures in our relationships, and for us to be in connection with any other human being in a meaningful, authentic way, that's always going to be a function of how much we bring ourselves to that relationship. How many parts of self do we share, you know? So I think this is it. You know, I've talked about self-advocacy being something that we need for our health. We certainly need it for the health of our relationships. And what I've noticed in the 2 years since writing How to Be Selfish, I've noticed my own relationships really bloom, because instead of censoring myself, instead of withholding and deliberately only choosing this thing that felt palatable or that thing that felt socially acceptable, I've been a little bit more honest and transparent, and my relationships are blooming. There are some relationships that don't survive that, but it's interesting as to to look at why that is, and it's all right. Sometimes there does need to be a little bit of pruning, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that we need this for the health of our relationships, and people also, it's not just about them knowing us. Of course, like humans, we need we all need to be witnessed. We need to be validated. We need to be understood. We need to be comforted. We need to be cared for. That's what we need as a human being. But also, our loved ones need an opportunity to be needed and depended upon and trusted. So it really fuels this deeper bond. So for people that are thinking, I mustn't burden others, we're actually robbing them of an opportunity to feel good about themselves, because we want to be there for our loved ones. And actually, they can wind up feeling rejected when we don't let them in.
Yeah. I think that's such an important piece to name, actually, Suzy, is that we can often see only the negative, the sense that I'm burdening somebody else when I have needs. And we negate the fact that they too are in relationship with us. And a relationship is always this beautiful dance of give and take, isn't it? And
reciprocity. Yes.
Yeah, that's the word. So maybe thinking a little bit about that, and actually this idea of the relationship with self, because you've spoken as much about this idea of coming back to a relationship with self. Let's say you are somebody who is highly sensitive, exceptionally empathetic, to the most part quite hypervigilant around the needs of others, and quite, I suppose, dismissive of your own, not by virtue of wanting to be, but because it's become quite a protective factor around how you preserve your relationships. Can you give any practical tips or suggestions around how you can start to compassionately respond to recognize your own energetic needs, boundaries, as it were? I want to pause here for a moment, because if this conversation is resonating, it's likely speaking to something deeper. Over the last few years, my work has evolved into what I now call the Reclaimed Motherhood Method, a compassion-led framework for understanding motherhood as a rite of passage, rather than something mothers simply need to cope with or perform better. This method is for practitioners who support mothers, therapists, doulas, clinicians, coaches, who can feel that the existing models don't quite hold the emotional, identity-shifting reality of motherhood. If you find yourself carrying the work home, feeling over-responsible, or quietly wishing for a more embodied, sustainable way to support mothers, I've opened a waitlist where I'll be sharing more as this work unfolds. You can join the Reclaimed Motherhood Method waitlist via the link in the show notes. And for now, simply know you're not alone in sensing that there's a different way.
I would actually suggest that one of the first places to start is just observing where it is safe to bring more of ourselves to relationship with. Because as you've named really powerfully there, sometimes this is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And if there's a relationship where for you to cope with it, for you to be safe, that means not sharing certain parts of yourself. I'm not going to say, come on, advocate for yourself. You know, there's a reason why there is that protective mechanism in place. But I think it does help for us to step back and say, okay, historically, maybe this was necessary. But do I need to employ the same way of being in this relationship? Actually, no, this is a totally different scenario. And that allows me to think, feel, and choose differently. But that won't be the same across the board for all relationships. So we need to identify who our safe people are. But the first place is to come home, to you know, revisit it. And we're so distracted, aren't we?
Yes, completely.
Other people's requests, you've got the school admin, you've got work life, you've got, you know, family, you've got pinging notifications. When do we actually notice? So, Kendra, I've got a really simple practice. Do you have a drink with you? Do you have a glass of water or a cup of tea?
I'm all ready for this one, Suzy.
Right. Okay. But this is the practice that I really love to share, because it's something we do this hundreds of times a day. So for anyone that's like, oh, I keep forgetting this stuff, it'd be really good if it's something easy to remember. So we pair it with an everyday activity. But there's something very beautiful about turning the act of drinking into a ritual, okay?
Yes.
So what I'd like you to do is, can you tenderly place one hand on your heart, and with this gesture, you are saying to yourself, I'm deserving of my own attention. It's okay for me to turn my mind's eye inwards. Focusing on self doesn't make me selfish. It just helps me connect with self. And when I connect with self, that's when I can observe how I'm feeling, what I need. It helps me lovingly tend to self, which is how I resource myself to show up as I aspire to. Okay, so there's a beautiful gesture of affirmation of worth here. Now with the hands on heart, let's take a little sip. How did that feel for you, Kendra?
That was very interesting, Suzy. Very interesting. I suppose it's interesting because I'm coming from this both in the kind of experience of it here, the experiential experience, and also from my practical lens, which is, I know this stuff, Suzy. Like, I know how to do the compassion. I know how to do that compassionate touch, and how to attend to myself, and how to bring mindfulness. And yet the combination of the two, and really checking in with a sense of, I'm giving myself time here. There was something different. It was really energetically different.
Yes.
I think there's something beautiful about that, truly.
There is something really, really beautiful about it. And I stumbled across this. There was one day that I put my hand on my heart and I took a sip of water. And I thought, oh my God, it's like my senses have been dialed up.
Completely.
Heightened
Yeah.
the sensory experience of it. I'm like, oh, I can actually feel the sensation of the glass at my lips. I can feel the temperature of what it is that I'm drinking, the flavor of it. I can feel it as I hold it in my mouth. I can feel the sensation of it as I swallow. And it really makes the whole thing feel really juicy and replenishing. And I'm like, how's bells? This is cool. We haven't finished yet. Okay? So there are two prompts that I'd like everyone to couple this with. So we've got hand on heart with some kind of affirmation of worth. It's okay for me to down tools. It's all right for me to take a purposeful pause, something like that. Then take a little sip and then ask yourself, where am I at right now? What's going on for me? What's happening with my body, without judgment, without character assassinations? Yep, I've got an achy toe, my shoulder's a bit gammy. What's happening? What kind of emotional tones are present? What's floating about here? Again, just allowing it to be as it is, but is there some kind of message there? And then where's my head at? What's the quality of my thinking right now? What's the nature of my thinking? Thoughts coming thick and fast, or we're just noticing. And based on those observations, The second prompt is, what do I need?
Oh, I like that pairing. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. What would somebody, or what would you say to somebody who feels they don't have an answer to that one, Suzy? I'm
Oh,
thinking
great.
here,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good question. Absolutely. I would say that the more you practice this ritual, hand on heart, have a little sip, you will notice. You'll notice. Do you know what? I've been sat down for the last 2 hours. I need to get up and out of my chair. Or I'm noticing I feel a bit disconnected. I haven't spoken to another human being for a bit. Where's the cat? Can I just sit with the cat on my lap for a minute? Yeah? It's really
Yeah.
important that we understand that meeting our needs doesn't always have to be, I'm going to go and book and see a physio. It could be, this is a bit creaky. Can I just do a little chicken wing shoulder roll? Yeah? So I would suggest that our bodies have so much wisdom.
Yeah.
And really our job is just to reconnect, and it'll tell us. But for anyone that struggles to put words to it, there's a whole chapter on that in how to be selfish.
Amazing.
So I've forgotten which number it is, but it's one of the steps is about boundaries with self. This is about healthy habits, the kind of the promises to self, the things that we need to be in safe and healthy relationship with ourselves. And these are really granular things like, what's our relationship with caffeine like? Our relationship with alcohol? What are our sleep needs? What are our movement needs? But that chapter in particular will help you put words to it. And there's a whole page of human needs, because I think this is something that even when you've been raised with attentive, loving, present parents, I don't think, well, I know that our parents weren't raised with the information that we have now about mental and emotional health. So I think it's so important that we receive these words of, it's totally normal to need a sense of belonging. It's normal to need a sense of feeling understood, of feeling accepted. Yeah. So when you have the language for it, that helps. So it's all mapped out on a single page in how to be selfish.
I love that. I really do, because I think you've named something there around language puts life to an experience, doesn't it? When we can name it, we can tame it, as Dan Siegel famously says.
Yes.
And I think there's something really powerful in that. I'm also thinking a little bit about how powerful that little ritual was ultimately, because it's small, but it doesn't detract from the magnitude of the ripples that can come from it either. And I suppose part of me is thinking about that piece around distraction you mentioned earlier, Suzy, about how our world is so geared towards busyness and productivity, and they really are these strong pieces that ultimately undermine our well-being, and how by virtue of that we lose ourselves in the process of it. I'm thinking here both as a practitioner who wants to do more and care more because they really value and see the importance of their work and they feel driven by that, but also the mother that feels like, I can't stop because if I do, then I'm not a good mother. How would you suggest we start unlearning some of these ideals so that we can prioritize this ultimately, and hopefully more spaciousness, but this?
I think we need to take a look at workability. Yeah. What is, how workable is it, our constant denial of human needs? I mean, they're human needs. These are not nice to haves. This is what we need to function. So we've got to fundamentally look at, how workable is it? Is this serving us? Actually, what's the cost here? What are the consequences of me doing this? And it's not just, is it doable in this moment? It's like, well, how sustainable is it? Where does this lead me? And again, this is where I've learned all of this the hard way. But for so many women, for so many mothers in particular, who are like, I've got to subjugate my needs to be a good mother.
Yeah.
We feel undeserving of it. And this is why I've written so extensively. I've written 9 books on practices that don't take time or energy or funds or physical freedom, because I'm like, I've got to overcome these barriers that people just say, well, I can't do it because there's no space or time. But that's not the real barrier. The barrier is that people fundamentally feel like it's it conflicts with their values. Yeah, it's impinging what matters them. But it's not. I think when we look at selflessness, I actually think that selflessness is the barrier to me showing up as a mum as I aspire to. So if we get granular about, okay, so what actually does a selfless mother look like? What are we trying to achieve here? Now, I'd love for you to add to this, Kendra, but the things that I'm trying to be as a selfless mum is I want to be present, I want to be patient, I want to be calm, I want to be a safe place.
Yeah,
I
I want to know
available.
how
Yeah.
to hold my child's developmental milestones appropriately.
Yes.
Remember all the school and nursery requirements. Did I pack the right clothes?
Yes. Yes. All of this. And the list goes on. But can we
Yeah.
see how selflessness, when we deny self, when we allow ourselves to be run ragged, taken advantage of, exploited, yeah? Can we be any of those things? I know I
No.
can't. That's when I'm
Yeah.
shouty mum and scary wife. There's no two ways about it. So the
Completely.
question is, when you think about what do you want to be as a mother, if you want to be compassionate, loving and available, then the question is, what do you need to be, how do you need to be resourced to show up like that? And if you're
Yeah.
saying to yourself, I don't deserve it, well then, here's the thing. The feeling of worth comes from the loving action. Don't wait to feel worthy of it before you do it. It's like after
I
you've
love
had a sip
that.
of water, that's when you're like, oh, yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
have every right to be here. You know, after someone's given you a hug, you feel loved, you feel worthy. But don't wait to feel worthy before you do it, because
Yeah.
it comes
Yeah.
from the loving, tender action.
Yeah, that piece is powerful, really powerful, Suzy. And it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking a little bit about how what you've named for mothers is so transferable into the way that we show up in caregiving roles outside of motherhood too, in our practitioner work, in the way that we show up as women, constantly striving to prove our enoughness, really. I'm in the process now actually of formulating a certification for practitioners around this idea of how do we tend to ourselves in the process of caring for others, because I've come from a space of feeling really completely burnt out, compassion fatigue ultimately. And I think it's because you've really named it there, which is that it is unsustainable to give from an empty cup, really. So out of curiosity, I'm thinking a little bit about if we were to retransform the traditional models of self-care and resilience, what do you think is the next frontier of how this should look for individuals in our world, in this world that is transforming and starting to notice the value of these really slow, intentional, compassionate practices, but only just because this is a movement, isn't it, Suzy, that you're creating?
It is a movement. I think we have to start living like we matter too. Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that is it in a nutshell. But what does that
Yeah.
actually look like? Well, I want mothers and carers to keep being loving, generous and caring in their nurturing roles. I want them to also feel comfortable taking care of self and being tender with our own humanity. But the missing piece for so many people is allowing other people to support us and love us as well. So that's what it looks like. Now, how do we achieve that? We achieve that via self-advocacy. So that's how we do it.
There's the missing piece again, hey? Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I'm also thinking here about how the nervous system and feeling comfortable enough to get to this point of being able to self-advocate and being able to be open and receptive to care and being able to prioritize ourselves as I matter is really essential in all of this. What happens if somebody's nervous system is screaming as they're listening to this, Suzy, and going, no way, like this does not land in the blueprint that I've been brought up with and the way that I know society expects things of me? What are some of the small kind of tasks, I suppose, steps that you would suggest? I know we've started unpacking some. Are there any others that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think this is where therapeutic support is really helpful. And I don't want people to think, I've got to fix my nervous system. on my own. You know, we do that in relationship with a safe person.
Yeah.
And it's a real honor to be able to do that kind of work. And for so many people where historically it hasn't been safe to express feelings, to even connect with feelings, for a lot of people, feeling itself is scary, is threatening.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unlearning to be done, but that needs to be done in the presence of another nervous system who can hold space for you, who can lend their calm, abiding center, and can also, you know, teach you that some human beings can be trusted. It happens in relationship. But for people that are looking for ways to gently soothe their nervous system themselves, there are loads of different things that we can do that will help us feel more safe and more confident to advocate with people who we know in our lives have our best interests at heart. And hopefully everyone listening can identify at least someone who they think, yeah, I know that person does really care about me. Yeah. So there are practices that can help us, because obviously if your nervous system is in a state of fight or flight or in the fawn response, it changes what we've got access to. Yeah. In terms of being able to speak up. So just to summarize it for people who are looking for ways to gently tend to their nervous system, then we're looking at grounding practices. These are things like the hand on heart is a grounding gesture, as is just feeling your feet against the floor, or even just running your hands firmly against your thighs. So a grounding practice is something where it tells your body where it is in space, and where your body knows where it ends and the environment around it begins. It's comforting, it's reassuring. So we can soothe ourselves by these grounding practices. I think my favorite grounding practice is the face hug.
I agree with that.
I love this one. When I do this, it reminds me of being 4 years old. Yeah, and I think we can lovingly tend to our inner child with this gesture, and we can say to ourselves, it's okay for me to feel as I do. I can make space for it. I can allow myself to feel this. I can remind myself that no feeling is permanent. This will pass. Yeah?
Yeah.
So grounding and touch. I mean, essentially touch is using the same mechanism. So, but not all touch looks like that. I quite like this one, which is, I reboot myself with this one, Kendra. So if you make a fist with both hands, now this sort of bony part here at the bottom of the thumb, imagine if we had two imaginary goatee horns. We're going to press the base of the thumbs into our imaginary goatee horns. And it doesn't matter. Like, you do a little experiment. You'll find that little sweet spot where you're like, oh, yeah, that feels good. I'm rebooting myself here. Yeah. You can feel how it softens the eyes, it releases the jaw. It slows the rate of breathing down. And then when you let it go, I don't know if you felt it too, but it lubricates the eyes a little.
Yeah, there's a tingle.
Yeah. So these are somatic practices that can support our nervous system, helping us shift out of the stress response and into rest and digest. We have to be in rest and digest to be able to vocalize. Yeah. It's very difficult in the stress response because the jaw clenches, the mouth gets dry, there's tension in the throat. It's really hard to enunciate, let alone find the right words that are going to land. So having an understanding of the nervous system and practices that can soothe the nervous system is really helpful.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think too about that openness, that kind of expansiveness that comes once you've tapped into some of those somatic tools. We can often find ourselves so caught in the headlights of needing to just survive, head down, pushing forward, getting through the school run, the bedtime routine, having to show up for our clients and then come back and do all the caregiving at home, that it can feel really hard to just stop and pause and find that breathing space. And the moment you do, suddenly life itself doesn't feel so much like you're having to survive it. Like you can notice the little robin outside your window bathing, and there's one at the moment in the little bird's pool. What is that called? There we go. And I think there's something about that expansiveness that can be so powerful. I was also really touched about the face holding. My daughter has just started doing it. She's 18 months now. And like something in me just got really tender in this acknowledgement of that young child part that is also getting met when we are meeting those self-advocacy needs. Because I suppose in part, and I might be reaching here, Suzy, so let me know what your thoughts are. I suppose in part we are doing what we weren't necessarily able to do as children when we step into our adult self and we start leaning towards the self-advocacy. And our society makes it really hard to do that by virtue of a really strong, dominant, patriarchal way of living. So when you start pushing up against the system a little bit in your own little rebellious acts, there's something quite beautiful about the ripple effects that I anticipate could possibly start to happen when you start giving that inner child a bit of a voice and go, actually, like that little innocent piece of you that really needed to be seen, you're deserving of the space in this world.
Yes. And the question here is, how can we say yes to ourselves? Yeah, you named it. You used the word spacious. That's such a vital word, spacious. Rest and digest is spacious. Yeah? Stress response is it's constricted, it's hard, it's rigid. Rest and digest is this beautiful sense of spaciousness. And even when this really brings it home. Like even when you think of like the word no, like can you feel how cold, humidity, no, like that's the stress response in a word.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Can you feel how spacious and expansive yes is? So the question is, how can you say yes to yourself?
Yeah. Oh, do you know what, Suzy? I can feel it just in my system if I do a bit of a sense check in my body from how I started. And I always start my podcasts feeling really kind of driven up and really excitable. But even that can be a bit of a stress response, can't it? And I feel the softening and this ease. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the magic of this work. So thank you. Thank you so much for your presence. For what you've offered for 10 books. I won't lie, I'm definitely aspiring to that. And just for what you're giving the world, I think it really is a gift. So before we wrap up, because I'm mindful I will keep talking to you if I don't start closing us off now, could you tell us a little bit about what you are offering the world in terms of your books that you've created, in terms of any other offerings that you have out there, Suzy? Sure. I'd love to know.
Okay, so if the practices that I've talked about today have piqued anyone's curiosity, please come and hang out with me on Instagram, because I quite often demonstrate and offer little guided practices. There was one day last week where I was having a rubbish day. And actually, as a very positive, effervescent person, everyone has bad days. And I'm quite happy as a psychologist to say that we also get the blues. So instead of just, keeping myself to myself, I thought, actually, I'm going to take everyone through the things that I do to support myself when I'm having a bad day. So come and hang out with me on Instagram, because it will bring it to life. In the link in my bio, there's a link to all of my books. The one that's focusing on what we've talked about today is How to Be Selfish. For parents, there is a lovely children's book as well. This book will help make you happy. So this is written for 8 to 12-year-olds, but you can read it to younger children. And this is how we can share with them the same kind of skills that we're working on. And the beautiful thing is we can be beginners together. Yeah, we can learn these things together. And if anyone is interested in healing relationship with self, in soothing the nervous system in a way that requires that safe place, I'm available for one-to-one work. And I do that remote, so that means that I can connect with people wherever they are in the world, which is such a blessing these days.
Oh, amazing, Suzy. Well, thank you so much again, truly. All of this will be in the show notes for those that are listening, so take a deep dive into that. And again, I appreciate your presence, Suzy. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day further.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you for this beautiful exchange.
Before we close, I want to leave you with a gentle invitation. If you're listening as someone who supports mothers, and today's episode has stirred recognition, questions, or even a quiet exhale, you might be exactly who the reclaimed motherhood method is being created for. This work isn't about learning more techniques. It's about understanding motherhood as a developmental transition, working compassionately with identity shifts, nervous system load, and emotional ecology, without burning yourself out in the process. I'm currently gathering practitioners into a waitlist as this work continues to take shape. Joining doesn't commit you to anything. It simply keeps you close to the conversation. You'll find the link in the show notes. And wherever you are in your journey, thank you for the care you bring to mothers and for being here.